मैं अमेरिका की मशहूर हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी में मौजूद हूँ और मेरे साथ मौजूद हैं हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर स्टीव जार्डिंग। प्रोफेसर जार्डिंग हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी के दो सबसे पॉपुलर कोर्सेज पढ़ाते हैं, मेकिंग ऑफ अ पॉलिटिशियन एंड रनिंग फॉर इलेक्शंस। इसके अलावा प्रोफेसर जार्डिंग के लिए न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स मैगजीन ने लिखा है कि ये वहां जिता देते हैं जहां जीतने की कोई संभावना नहीं होती। सर, वेलकम टू APN न्यूज।
It's great to be on. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
As a student, sir, I never imagined that making of a politician, running for elections, these could actually be courses taught in a university. How did the idea of designing these courses come to you?
Well, almost by accident, frankly. The Kennedy School had a course on running for office, and they phased it out. They were getting no students in it. And I had been a fellow at the Institute of Politics in 2003, and I guest lectured in a couple classes here, and I'd been a practitioner, had run campaigns for 30-some years, and the professors went to the dean and said, I know that class only has 10 or 12 students and you're phasing it out, but why don't you let Jarding teach it, offer him a job, because he's a practitioner and he's had all this success and, you know, places he wasn't supposed to win, and he lectured and the students loved him. So the dean came to me and said, well, and they had actually already phased it out of the budget, so they had to put it back in the budget. And he came to me and asked if I would be interested, and I said I would. And so you'll love this. And he said, would you teach it for free? And I said, no, I won't. And he said, you'd be surprised how many people would teach it free for Harvard just to say they taught at Harvard. And I said, I wouldn't be one of them. So I said, you got to pay me. But because I said, I'm not doing it for the money, I'm doing it for the love of the profession. So they gave it to me. In the first year, they had 12 students the year before. The first year I taught it, we had 76. And then we went to 96. And then we filled Star Auditorium at 150 students, and we couldn't take any more. And then a couple of years later, that course was so popular, they asked me to teach a politician's course, which I've turned into this media training course. And it's the only media training course that I know of in the world. There aren't many campaign management courses either, but the Kennedy School loves them because they're practical courses. Half of my students are international students. I now work in, I think I'm in 28 countries around the world now doing training in campaign management or media training. So the demand is just huge, and the courses have just grown exponentially, and so I'm having great fun with it. And so it was kind of an accident. They had already phased the program out, brought it back on a trial basis, and then it just took off.
I know, there's a long wait list for your course.
There is, yeah. And I'm sad about that. We turned away over 200 students from the course this spring, and we turned over 200 students away. I take about 60 students in it, but we do a lot of individual training in media training, so I can't take any more. But so I wish there was a better answer, because I wish we could take them all.
So you are considered the political strategist of Akhilesh Yadav, who is the present Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh. What are your predictions for these 2017 assembly elections that have taken place in Uttar Pradesh?
Oh gosh, I mean, this is at the point where, you know, the predictions don't matter. I mean, we're at the end of the road. I feel good that I think Akhilesh is in a position to do pretty well. I think he can win. I hope that he does, obviously. I'm not sure he was in that position a few months ago when we started. I mean, it's been an important kind of a strategic path that we've been on. But I'm very proud of what he's done. I'm very proud of how I think we've brought some things together. That I think the alliance with Congress was good for both entities. I just think it's you know, instead of making predictions, I hope that we win, and I think we're in a position to win. And a few months ago, I think most people would have said that's not possible. So, you know, we'll see when the votes are counted. But I think we've come a long way, and I think everybody saw that when you do the types of things that we did, it can make a big difference. And so I'm proud of that. And I hope to, you know, we'll see what happens after this election. But I just firmly believe that India is literally on the cutting edge of leading the world in so many ways. And so for me to be able to work there is an honor. And I hope to do more work, you know, down the road, whatever that may be.
So you just mentioned about the alliance with Congress. Congress has not had a very good base in Uttar Pradesh. Do you think that the alliance with Congress will benefit Akhilesh Yadav?
Well, I think it will. I mean, because I think Congress, they haven't necessarily had a base, but I think Congress has a history and a culture throughout India that is very powerful. and I know they've taken their lumps and had some losses recently, but I think that the main power, if you will, or the image in that brand is still very strong. I just think it needed a little bit of a boost, a little jump start, because I think there's more there than people may realize. And that's why I said at the outset, I think this is one. Sometimes in politics you can get a win-win. I think this is a win for Congress, and I think this is a win for SP and for Akhilesh, and I think it'll benefit both. I think both have a brighter future because of this alliance.
And so what about the family feud that has taken place within the Samajwadi Party?
Well, families are families. God love them. I said all along when I first met with Akhilesh in August, and he talked about these things and what was going on, and I mean, he loves his family, but he's also got responsibility as the chief minister, and he knew that. And he had a lot of things he had been working on that he wanted to continue, that he thought were successful, and they were. He was doing good things. And he took that responsibility to the people very seriously. And it was very, very difficult for him. I mean, I on more than one occasion sat in his office, just the two of us, and he'd kind of agonize over this is very painful. This is very difficult. But he's a proud man, and I think he understands public service. It's what attracted me to him when I first met with him in August, and asked him why he wanted to be reelected, and he said, "I'm not finished. I've got a lot of projects that we've started that are really good. We're trying to build wealth in our people. We're trying to do great things in UP, and I'm not finished." And it was the right answer, right? You go, okay, well, that's why you should be doing this. And so I think that's what carried him, that passion to try to do what was right for the people, carried him so that he could live with the uncomfortableness that was going on with the family. So, I look at families and say, every family has their imperfect moments, right? And their family had a difficult one, and it's close. But I think today it's better and stronger, and he did what he had to do, and I'm proud of him for that, because I know it wasn't easy.
So do you think he's ready to move to the next level from the state politics to the national politics?
Well, I'm very impressed with Akhilesh, and the more I've worked with him, when I had a chance to travel with him and out into the country and saw him perform with people at rallies and different things, I think Akhilesh Yadav can do whatever he wants. I mean, I think he is an extreme talent. I think his future is ahead of him if that's what he chooses to do. This is, of all the politicians that I've worked with around the world, including in the United States for the better part of 40 years, he's as bright a star as you'll find. This is a very talented man. Now, again, he may not want to do it. He may, who knows? We'll see what happens in the election. I don't know that the election absolutely means that if he doesn't win that he couldn't do something. I think if it looks like it's at least as close as he is, and he comes close, I think he's opened a lot of eyes that this is somebody that we should continue to watch. So, no, I genuinely think that he is a tremendous talent, and with his drive and his passion for the people of India, I think his future is what he wants to make it, because I think he could do anything.
Coming from you, that's a very big compliment.
Well, I mean it. I don't throw those lightly. I've worked with a lot of politicians where I couldn't say that to you. You'd ask and I'd go, well, but I don't have to with him. I'm impressed with his wife. I'm impressed with the way they've handled things. I'm impressed with his vision, that he didn't waver on wanting to do these things and get this done for the people, in this case of UP. So no, I'm very high on the chief minister. I really do think his future is very bright if he chooses to continue on this path.
So, sir, how is campaigning in India different from campaigning in United States or the rest of the world?
They're all different, and that's why I'm not from India, so I don't come in, and my role in this effort wasn't I'm the expert. My role is, I know I've done campaigns all over the world, and I've got some, I think, value add that I can do in voter contact and voter persuasion. But we need a good team on the ground that knows India law, India culture, India politics. He's got that. And so we were able to merge, I think, the best of my value add to what he already had. And so that was the most important thing. There are differences, and yet the way that you persuade voters, contact voters, the methods may be different, but people are people. All over the world, they have fears, insecurities, needs from their government. And I think the most successful political leaders tap into that and figure out what that is and address those fears and insecurities. So it's different in the sense that 70+% is rural, and they're a little harder to reach than maybe they would in other countries, but they're still people, and you figure out a way to go talk to them, figure out a way to find out what their needs and fears are and how you can address them. And in that sense, politics is pretty standard all over the world. I mean, I've done races in Bangladesh, I've done races in Indonesia, similar cultures to India. And you see more of the rural and village, but that's just the kind of the cards that are dealt. But the way that you address voters, the way that you persuade and turn out voters, really is pretty common worldwide.
So, sir, how important is caste as a factor in Indian politics? Well,
it's important because it's a huge part of the culture, and yet at the end of the day, normally in most places, anywhere in the world that I've worked, and like I said, I think I've been in 28 countries now. At the end of the day, people tend to get very simple in their needs, right? And we talk about it in the businesses, kitchen table issues. When we sit around the kitchen table at night as parents, we don't necessarily say, I'm with this party or this ideology or this caste or this race or whatever it is, wherever you're at in the world. We tend to say, how are the kids doing? What are we doing enough for them? Or what's their education like? Are they getting health care? Are they getting nutrition? We become, very humanistic in that sense. We worry about the same things worldwide. And so in that sense, again, whether it's caste or not, they're important and you take them into account. But at the end of the day, human needs are human needs. And if I think political leaders that understand that their responsibility, I tell my students all the time and candidates around the world, public service is not about those who serve. It's not about you. It's about those who would be served. So are you serving your people? If you're doing that, some of these other kind of categorizations, again, while they're important in a cultural and historical sense in many parts of the world, including India. But at the end of the day, people want to know, are you working for me? Is government working? And so I find that universal worldwide.
So talking to you, I get the impression that there is a lot of one-to-one approach during the campaigning. I was under the impression that social media has been used extensively.
Social media is very important. It's here to stay. And it's growing every day. There are new platforms all the time. It's simple. It's cost effective, as we know. But you can also reach people where they live. I mean, literally, you can talk to them about the issues that impact their lives in a very personal way that you can't do on television or you can't do in kind of these mainstream types of voter contacts. So, yeah, there was a lot of one-on-one. I mean, millions of personal contacts were made. Networks were developed in all the villages to try to move the message. And it's hard to do. It's labor intensive. But, I think Akhilesh and his team, did a pretty strong effort there. So hopefully it'll work.
So normally when you approach a particular when a political leader approaches you, what is the size of the team that you have?
Oh gosh, it varies. I mean, every place is different. And sometimes, strangely, the bigger the place, the smaller the crowd. So you sometimes think UP is a couple 100 million people. You think there's this huge infrastructure. Not really. I've been in smaller countries that have bigger infrastructures in the political arena. So it's not so much how big the team is. It's really, is the team focused on the things it needs to be focused on to be successful. And you need a certain number of bodies doing, anything from, messaging and research and certainly field work. A lot of people in India, a lot of need to go on the ground and have people in the villages. So in that sense, very labor intensive because of the nature of India. In this case, UP in India. So in that sense, it was very large, but not necessarily the inner circle. The advisors, the people working in different kind of departments in the campaign, those were pretty similar no matter how big or small the country is or the race is, because the needs are the same. Every campaign needs to, have media relations, has to have voter contact, has to have research, has to have scheduling, all these departments, they're the same for every campaign. And so big or small, they're the same. In this case, though, labor-intensive, big country, or big state in this case, got a lot of people, so the field team had to be very large, and it was.
So in India, when you ask a person, when you ask a child, what do you want to be? They normally say doctor, engineer, maybe IAS, IPS. Nobody ever says, I want to be a politician.
Yeah, it's sad.
So there's a stigma attached to you having politics as a career.
Yeah.
Why is that so? And is that only in India,
No.
or is it there in the rest of the world?
It's worldwide,
Also?
and I take it very seriously. It's sad. I mean, if you think about it, government is by far the strongest entity ever devised by humankind to impact the lives of humanity. Just is. It's the largest business in every country. They make laws, they enforce laws, they determine whether you get health care, education, nutrition. They have all this power, and yet nobody wants to get into it. It has this bad name. It is the #1 profession worldwide that parents don't want their children to go into. Isn't that sad?
Very true.
You know, because it's the profession that you can do the most good. And I think the problem is because it's getting this bad kind of stigma that a lot of good people are going into other professions. And part of my training and my lecturing is, no, you have a responsibility as part of a human species to give part of your life back to public service. We all have a responsibility to make our world, our countries, a better place. And if we can get better people to take that focus and get them into politics, not necessarily their entire career, just even a part of it, instead of just all in law or medicine or education or whatever. Those are all important, but they don't impact lives like government does. So we got to get that back. We got to show people that politics matters in their lives. I get that politics can be a nasty business, right? It can be a challenging business because it seems dirty sometimes, and it gets. But I wish I could change that. But those are the cards you're dealt. You got to play those. But I got to get someone to this place that they're elected, so that they have the title and the power and the reach to impact lives. And so my challenge is to try to get next generation leaders to understand the daunting, unbelievable power that comes with elective office, and the daunting responsibility that comes with that, to make sure that you serve all the public.
So you're trying to get good people in the nasty business.
Well, to get past the nasty bit, I don't think governing's nasty. Politics can be nasty. Government can be corrupt. Government can do bad things. But government, by definition, is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a very good thing. I mean, government, by definition, is, if you go back to Aristotle, one of the founders of political theory, basically said, we need government because we need rule of law. So we start with that. But then governments are going to be good if they take care of people and people are happy. Okay, well that's an honorable thing. The problem is governments aren't always doing that. They are getting corrupted. They are not necessarily helping all the masses. Leaders don't necessarily understand this daunting responsibility that service is about the people to serve, not the special interests that serve them. And I think that's, once we convince more people they need to get into this, good people that are responsible, I think we'll have better government. I see it all the time when I talk to young people, and I'll give lectures, and I'll get people line up afterward and say, Professor, I'm going to run. You convinced me, you inspired me to do it. I hadn't really looked at this perspective, but we got to take our governments back. And now, most of those people probably won't. Life will intervene and they won't get there. Some of them will.
So you've advised so many people till now. How come you have never entered politics yourself?
I've been asked that a lot. I don't know if the world's ready for me. I mean, I'm kind of an opinionated person. I don't know. I'm 58. I haven't ruled it out. I think I love what I'm doing. I think I hopefully am impacting the world in a positive way. I've taught thousands of students and political figures around the world. I think I have 9 former students in the process of running for president or prime minister.
Wow.
Some of them are going to get elected. Not all of them, undoubtedly. Some of them will get elected, may not be the leaders I hope they are, but some of them will. And that's a good start. I think for me, my father died when I was just a few months old, and I kind of personally vowed I wanted to raise my 3 kids and be home, because I wanted to be a father that could be with them as much. but now they are raised, and they're almost through university, all three of them. And so yeah, I've got another chapter in my life. I haven't ruled it out. Yet I love what I'm doing. We're opening a leadership institute in Bosnia. I'm going there next week. That's hugely important in a very troubled part of the world. I think it's important that I played a role in really setting the tone to set that up and raising some money for it. Looks like we're going to set one up. I just got back from Mongolia. We're going to set up a leadership institute there, in a very important strategic part of the world. We're looking at doing these things all over. So right now, I think there's a lot of value in what I'm doing, and I hope there always would be. But I'm, the defective gene is in me too. There's something about politics that at some point we'll see where life takes me. But I figure I've got another chapter, hopefully 15, 20 years, where I can make an impact, and maybe in the next couple of years I'll decide to take that plunge and go down that path.
My best wishes are with you, sir.
Well, thank you.
So millions of Indians are viewing this interview. What was your impression of India? Did you like being there?
I loved it, actually. Now, although it was interesting, when I came in August, it was very warm, and it's just, you got to get used to it, right? And I think when I got there, it was like 117 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's just different, right? Because it doesn't get that warm here. So there's an adjustment there, but when I was there in much of December and January, it was 70, 80 degrees. So it was, it's 30 degrees or 20 degrees in Boston. So it was like, this is wonderful. But no, I mean, other than, those types of things that you adjust to, the people are terrific. I love the Indian people. As you can tell, the food was great, and I indulged. I love that. But I just love the best part that I had, and I met so many interesting people, and I spent much of the time with the Chief Minister and with his team, but I also had time to go to the villages, and oh my God, what an inspiration. I mean, you look at the villages, there's a lot of needs, obviously. India is just kind of coming into its own with this economy. It just overtook Great Britain in size of economy a few weeks ago. I mean, it's so kind of ready to break out. And you go to the villages and you could look and see, well, maybe there's not a lot of hope here. There's a lot of issues that need to be taken care of. My God, was I wrong? And people, the young people particularly, and young girls, we'd meet with the villagers very often, a group, maybe it'd be the men or the older people would speak first. And off to the side would be this group of girls, 11, 12, 13, 14, and they were reluctant to talk. And so we'd in every village we'd say, "Well, what do you guys think? What do you?" And they'd kind of look at each other and very shy, and then maybe one of them would speak. And pretty soon, you had this dialogue, and they were, we got to do better for girls. Our schools aren't where they need to be. We need better hospitals that have doctors and nurses. I mean, they were fired up and full of hope and determination, and that's a great sign for a great nation. I have said, and I mean this. I mean, if you look at the 21st century, the United States still has great power. Arguably has gone in the wrong direction for a while. China has great power. They're struggling with their government. Brazil has great potential, natural and human resources. They're struggling with their government. Russia, I think Putin has kind of taken them out of the equation. I think he's raided the cookie jar and hurt the Russian people. But, European Union has great potential, obviously, but they're struggling. Well, you look at those 5 or 6 and you say, India, right? I mean, this easily could and likely should be India's century. And I think that's a good thing. I look at the Indian people and I see the work ethic, I see the honesty, I see the values, and you say, we could be in pretty good hands. Well, they got to do it right. Government has to make sure it does it right, has to invest in people. But if India gets it right, they are going to be a hugely important leader in the world that hopefully can couple with places like the United States, maybe a Brazil, but get 2 or 3 of these world leaders to help solve some of these major problems out there. But I'm fortunate to be able to work in India because I do think, I do world politics, and India arguably right now is right at the center of all the action for this century. So I'm I'm honored, and yet I've loved it.
So we'll be seeing a lot of you in the near future in India?
Well, potentially, yes. I intend to come back and do some things, including on the education side. We're looking at opening a leadership institute somewhere in the country, maybe more than one place. But I've had a lot of political interest, and I think we've had some success. I think we, hopefully showed that if I am smart enough to take the advice of the people of India that know the laws and the culture and the things and work together and not try to act like I know more than they do, we can have a pretty good partnership. So, I hope so. Because again, for me, it's real simple. I just think, India is one of the 2 or 3 nations that is going to figure this out and is going to lead in the 21st century. So for me to be a part of that, having done as much work as I have in the United States, as much work as I have in Europe, as much work as I do in Brazil, I've got kind of a hand in all those cookie jars, and it's exciting, and I really enjoy it. But India is clearly, right at the top, and so yes, I hope and intend to be back as much as I can.
My best wishes are with you, sir.
Thank you.
It's been very interesting talking to you. Thank you so much for having spared your time for us.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I do it anytime. So thank you, and I'm glad you're in journalism. It's a great profession.
Thank you so much.
Okay, all right, take care.
तो ये थे प्रोफेसर स्टीव जार्डिंग हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी के, जो कि ये एक्सक्लूसिव बातचीत कर रहे थे APN न्यूज के साथ।